The prayer this morning will be offered by the good gentleman representing Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Friends, on this day, 222 years ago, President Jefferson founded the United States Military Academy at West Point, our nation's premier service academy and the current home of the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy. So in honor of Founders Day, today I offer the cadet prayer. O God, our Father, thou searcher of human hearts, help us to draw near to thee in sincerity and truth. May our religion be filled with gladness, and may our worship of thee be natural. Strengthen and increase our admiration for honest dealing and clean thinking, and suffer not our hatred of hypocrisy and pretense ever to diminish. Encourage us in our endeavor to live above the common level of life. Make us to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and never to be content with a half-truth when the whole can be won. Endow us with courage that is born of loyalty to all that is noble and worthy, that scorns to compromise with vice and injustice, and knows no fear when truth and right are in jeopardy. Guard us against flippancy and irreverence in the sacred things of life. Grant us new ties of friendship and new opportunities of service. Kindle our hearts in fellowship with those of a cheerful countenance, and soften our hearts with sympathy for those who sorrow and suffer. Help us to maintain the honor of the Corps untarnished and unsullied, and to show forth in our lives the ideals of West Point in doing our duty to thee and to our country. All of which we ask in the name of the great friend and master of all. Amen.
Amen. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 132 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read the journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March the 6th, 2024.
Recognizing the Deputy Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the journal.
So order petitions, memorials, and other papers. Message from the Senate. Consent calendar number 22. Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 71, Senator Carter, Judiciary.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of Senate Bill 71, be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
Here are no objections. The bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committees. Message from the Senate, consent calendar number 23, Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the first bill and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 13, Senator Jackson, Health and Government Operations.
Recognizing the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of Senate Bill 13, be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
Here are no objections. The bills are read the first time and referred to the appropriate committee. Special order calendar number 47. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1319, Internet Gaming, Authorization and Implementation. Favorable report is amended and adopted.
Rocky.
Sorry about that. Was running mine over to this chairperson. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have, Madam Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk. The amendment is 553626-1.
Amendment number 1.
So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Madam Speaker, this amendment I think is a pretty common sense amendment. What it does is it requires that deposits for internet gaming or iGaming, as it is referred, be done in person. Now, I'll tell you a story of why this amendment came for me. So, all of us had experiences during COVID. Weird things happened. I had a friend during COVID who was at home and got really, really involved in internet gaming, unfortunately. And without a friction point, he was able to do some really serious damage to himself financially and to his family. So what this amendment does is it essentially would require someone to make an in-person deposit to just create a friction point in that process, to slow the process down. If you'll look at some of the studies from institutions that look at gaming practices, gaming addiction, they recommend many things like this. The Morgan State University, in fact, did a study recently looking at all types of internet gaming, not only iGaming, but sports books and things like that. And this was something that they talked about in that study too, to have just something to slow folks down. Also, when you have to go in person, and we talk a lot, we've had a lot of discussions. Don't need to relitigate discussions about children, right? But we talk a lot about kids on the floor here. And so this is just another mechanism to verify as well that the person that is doing the gaming is an adult that should be able to do the gaming. So when you show up to do a deposit, it would make sure that someone is 21, that it is not a child, that it's people basically that we don't necessarily want to be iGaming. I don't think any of us want children to be participating in that process. I've got a 17-year-old daughter. She's got a cell phone. Now, I'm pretty restrictive of that cell phone, but people can do all kinds of things. She's got a job. She's got a bank account. Who knows where that could lead for some folks. So this would be a mechanism to require that when someone is making deposits to their account that they would have to do that in person. And that's essentially what the amendment does, and I move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would ask the body to resist this amendment. We have done a lot of protections in the legislation to ensure that the individual who is participating in iGaming is 21. There are significant protections, including verification of identification, requiring the commission to come up with regulations of the licensee, which could require two-type authentication, kind of like when you sign into your bank account. There are limits of spending built into the legislation that are mandatory, and also suspension of activity should there be a spike in play. And so because of those reasons, and also I would add that we do not require the same for our sports betting, so I would ask that we do not require it here and ask that the body resist this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Maker of the
Madam
amendment.
Chair. Madam Speaker, I'm sorry. Madam Chair, I certainly appreciate that. And I said Madam Speaker, I'm sorry. Madam Chair, I certainly appreciate those parts of the bill. I think that those are all important. I think that it's important to have, though, as many friction points as possible to slow folks down, because what we've seen in other states, and there's only 7 states that have done this so far, but the data from those 7 states that have done internet gaming is you see typically radical sort of spikes in addictive behavior with respect to gaming. So although this would help with children, it also helps with that, with slowing down some of that type of behavior. You can see often that folks do, if they have to get up off their couch and not be participating just at the casino on their couch, and they have to go somewhere, you often see that they may make a different decision in terms of the type of betting that they may do. And for that reason, I move the amendment.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? No. Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Recognizing the gentlelady from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good to see you this morning. I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment 803129/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the floor leader rise for a question, please?
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
What in the bill, the 17-page bill, is the bill doing or directing to ensure the identity of the person that is going to be gambling on their phone?
So thank you for the question, and thank you for providing me this morning with your amendment. I appreciate that. So the bill does require that a licensee initially and periodically verify the users is in fact 21 years of age. And the bill requires that the commission come up with regulations that the licensees will have to abide by that go to verifying periodically that the person who is playing is in fact 21 years of age.
So I'm pleased that you're asking the commission to come up with guidelines. So thank you, Madam Floor Leader. This amendment is simple, and it will instruct the commission. So we're not leaving it to hope that they're going to do the right thing with this. And it is just saying that a person who wants to gamble on their cell phone would need to go to a physical location in the state approved by the State Lottery and Gaming Control Agency to prove their identity. We know how easy it is for people online to fake an identity, and for fraud, for other purposes, to ensure that there hasn't been a stolen identity, for kids who could be using their parents' ID for people that might have a fake ID. This will just put one protection in there to make sure that people who are going to gamble on their phone or iPad or computer would be verified in person that they are at least 21 years old and they're somebody that should be gambling. So with that, I move the amendment.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I would ask the body to resist this amendment. We do not have to go in person to the bank to be verified. You have online banking. Your credit cards have ways of verifying who you are. I, in fact, did an eye exam online, which verified who I was. You can have doctor's appointments that verify who you are. And to the same extent, the commission is best suited to determine how the industry who handles this type of technology can come up with a way to verify that someone is in fact 21 years of age. It's best for them to do that and not for us to figure that out. And with that, I would ask for this body to resist that amendment. Thank you.
Maker of the amendment.
I press my amendment, Madam Speaker. The commission may very well determine this is the best way to do it, but as we know, gambling can be addictive and it can be predatory, and it is ripe for fraud. So I think that this is a protection for the people of the state to make sure that there is at one point an in-person verification. So I press my amendment.
On the amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, gentleman from Baltimore County.
Madam Speaker, I stand in rise of this great amendment. I never talk about my family on public, but compulsive disorders is very dangerous. Folks, every one of us have a cell phone, and we get disordered and compulsive with that. I have a nephew that has Tourette syndrome. You talk about putting stuff aside and put in place, they will find the way. I press this issue. I think it's very important that compulsive disorder, this gambling, I counsel with a lot of people, and gambling, I've seen my neighbor lose her house. I've seen people go into financial distress. My son was in college with a young man. His father owned a chain of Krispy Kreme donuts. He almost took his father broke on gambling online. So I press this issue.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Recognize the gentleman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. It's amendment number 303-226/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
I dropped the amendment off yesterday, Madam Chairman. I didn't get a chance to speak with you, but I'm going to hope you have it. What this would simply do is require that there be a two-factor authentication each time an individual attempts to access an internet gaming account. This is important because of a number of reasons, but there are reports all around the country and data that is beginning to accumulate as because of sports betting, and also as states, in my opinion, wrong-mindedly advance iGaming of young people, people who are in teenage years accessing through their parents' or others' accounts, their gambling accounts. It seems far-fetched to think that this is possible. I certainly don't allow my children access to my cell phone, but it's happening around the country, and a simple search on the internet shows lots of stories about it and lots of, quite frankly, concerning issues as it relates to it. And the data shows that individuals who are of this age that access gambling, whether with their parents' oversight or permission, or if they're doing it in secret, because their minds aren't developed, they have a 4 times greater likelihood of developing addiction. That's data. It's not a burden on the companies that provide this technology. They do it in certain parts of the country and around the world. And frankly, it's a prudent step in preventing that people that don't have authorization, that they don't have access to the bank account, to the credit card, or whatever it may be. And I move the amendment.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I did receive the amendment, so thank you for that. Again, I would ask this body to resist this amendment. The legislation says generally that the licensee will initially and periodically verify who they are. It is best for the commission to determine what that should actually be, because they're more nimble, they can adapt to technology and keep up with whatever the highest and best technology is. And I will say our commission has the highest award actually for being in responsible gaming and responsible lottery. So I'm certain that they will adopt whatever the highest standard is. So I would ask that this body reject this amendment.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just quickly, I'll say that whatever is happening isn't enough, because a simple search of the internet will show that throughout the country, there's more data on gaming, sports betting, than there is on gaming. Sports betting is being accessed by people who aren't authorized under the law to access it, underage 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and this is a prudent step to protect against that. Maybe in future years we can change it and make it more broad, but in the meantime, so that we can have assurances that the wrong people are not accessing this, and in the interest of protecting our youth, I press the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional
Madam Speaker.
amendments to the bill or to its title? Recognize gentleman from Baltimore.
Thank you. I just had a quick question for the floor leader.
Chair of the
Or
committee.
Chair, I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we're going to be here on a Saturday, we might as well talk about something fun like gambling. I honestly have no idea how iGaming works. If you're on your phone and say you're playing roulette, is there like a live dealer or live, if you're playing poker or whatever, that comes on your phone? I have no idea how this works.
So the legislation provides that there could be live dealers. And if there are live dealers, if the licensee chooses to do that, they have to be located here in the state of Maryland. And if they operate a brick and mortar, they have to be in the county where that brick and mortar is. So if you do, it could be a live dealer for poker or roulette if they choose to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to learn a little bit more. It does sound fun, but it's a little dangerous too at the same time. But
Well, I will say to you that currently in the state of Maryland, there is illegal iGaming going on to the tune of about $200 million a year, where individuals are playing where there are no safeguards on there, and they're playing with, you know, somebody in Curacao or somebody running it. So this would at least put parameters on it and regulations on it and regulate that illegal market.
And that's my concern, because yeah, I mean, we were playing games like this in college a long time ago, that probably some offshore plays, and you have no idea if it's rigged or not. So I want to make sure if people are going to be gaming on their phone, that they're not just being basically playing a losing hand, so to speak, automatically, and it's actually a fair shake if they are going to be gambling and it's not corrupted by just a computer.
Well, this would be a regulated market. It's in a highly regulated industry. So they would not be playing, you know, an automatic fair hand to your question.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've got an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 603122.
Amendment number 1.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the committee for their insight into this bill, because this amendment speaks to page 11, line 27. It says a limit on the amount of money deposited within a specified period of time and a length of time by the account holder. So they understood that the amount of money that could be bet and the frequency of money being bet could be a danger. So this bill quite simply sets those limits as $5 per bet or $100 total in a 24-hour period. Now, I'm going to beg you colleagues to forgive me that I don't have the vocabulary to spit out a soliloquy of 5- and 6-syllable words like we saw demonstrated on this floor the other day, or to wax poetically about Casablanca or Rambo. But it does bring to mind one of my favorite movies, and that was Tombstone. Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday having a conversation, and Doc Holliday looked at Wyatt Earp and he said, "No, I said poker is an honest game. Only suckers buck the tiger. The odds are all on the house." And that's still true today. That's why those hotels are so big. And we need to make sure we protect people that will be gambling. I applaud some of the legislation that we put through my committee and we put through other committees in this House on mental health. We are asking our coaches, our teachers, our nurses, our doctors to recognize a problem. And when you go to a casino to gamble, you have live interaction, face-to-face with somebody. And if they see a problem, then they can alert somebody. When you're on your phone, sitting on your couch at home, there's nobody to put a limit on you. And that can be dangerous. Now, I once knew somebody in college, and we didn't have the internet then, that was a bookie. And it was always interesting. How many people bet on Monday night? Some people bet Saturday, some people bet Sunday. Everybody. Everybody bets Monday night because they're chasing their losses. That's why they bet Monday night. That's why the NFL moved their games to 8:30. They used to be 9, was too late, went to 8, found out the money wasn't flowing in, moved it back to 8:30. Because they wanted as much money flowing in as possible. Because people get themselves in serious trouble gambling. And if we don't put some sort of limitation on that and some safeguards like we do on so many other things in here, this could become a serious problem run amok. And with this simple amendment, let's do it right here, right now. We're going to ask somebody else to do it, obviously, in the bill. If we're going to be the ones drafting the bill and writing the bill, I think we should be the ones to put that limit right here and have this safeguard. And I think it's a simple amendment. And with that, I push the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for providing me with the amendment yesterday. So the committee was concerned about these issues. So the legislation provides, in order to encourage responsible gaming, that the licensee has to require an individual to set a limit on their spending, and the limit can only be changed periodically. And if someone tries to change that limit prior to the time limit, they cannot do that. After their time limit expires, that period expires, and they try to do it, they still have to wait a cooling off period of about 24 hours. I will also say that we do not place limits on individuals when they go play the lottery, when they're doing scratch-offs, purchasing lottery tickets, in sports betting, or when they are in person at a brick and mortar. So we should not do that in this either. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I ask that we reject this amendment.
Gentleman from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Body, I stand in support of this amendment. There's a reason why we have restrictions on an ATM taking cash out. I believe it's a $300 limit. This is a very similar amendment to keep limits on gambling. So I stand in support of this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will just say you actually set your own limits when you go to the ATM, because I actually did not realize that some time ago, and I could only take a certain amount out, and I went and fiddled in my bank account, and I changed my own limit. So you can actually go in and change your own limit in your bank account, and I ask that we reject this amendment.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Really? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Here, Madam Chair.
Madam Speaker, I believe I have an amendment at the desk.
Okay.
Amendment number,
You don't?
okay, 1 second.
Huh? We don't. We do not have one.
Madam Speaker,
I believe my colleague has an amendment at the desk. I apologize, Madam Speaker.
I have an amendment at the desk.
Go ahead.
So much be considered the reading of the amendment, Madam Speaker.
So ordered.
Thank you. Colleagues, this is, I hope, a clarifying amendment. I'm sorry.
Ho.
Sorry.
Okay.
The number is 203321. So much consider, sorry, I've never done this. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Okay. Colleagues, this is an amendment to this bill. In this bill, I hope it's a clarifying amendment. I hope it'll be considered a friendly amendment. What this amendment does is it clarifies the labor peace provisions in this bill. So let me just explain what a labor peace agreement does, and then I'll talk just briefly about the amendment. What the labor peace agreement does is it says that if the employers recognize the union without fighting the union, without talking against the union, without convincing the workers not to vote for the union, that the union then, as a quid pro quo, agrees not to disrupt the employer's business by strike or picketing or other things. All right, so this language clarifies that labor peace agreement that's already in the bill. And what the language does is it puts in the part about the employer, in this case the applicant, licensee, or live dealer, studio operator, that they will remain neutral in a union drive. Okay, that's all that this language does. And as I say, I hope that it's considered a friendly amendment. Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, the committee considers this a friendly amendment and will be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Alrighty. On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The amendment passes. Any other amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill. Special order calendar. Special order calendar number 43. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 961, State Government Commission on New Americans established. Favor report is amended and adopted.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to read the amendments, and I will do so.
What?
Thank you for your patience, Madam Speaker.
What are we doing?
Amendment number
Hold-
one.
hold-
Move so much be considered the
hold.
reading of the amendments. Oh, we've already done that.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on at my desk. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The maker of the special order.
Thank you, Madam
Yes.
Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Thank you. 453628-1.
Okay, go ahead.
Give
Go
me
ahead.
repeat
I-
that. Amendment number 453628-1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My amendment is a simple amendment. As I stated yesterday, the bill defines a new American as a resident of Maryland whose country of origin is a country other than the U.S., who is not a citizen of the U.S., or who has recently become a naturalized citizen of the U.S. And what I would like to add to the bill is just to make the definition clear that a new American must be a lawful resident of Maryland. And the reason I think it's important to establish this is because of the Commission's purpose. The bill states that the Commission shall measure and report on the availability of government services throughout the state for new Americans. I would imagine that the data from this report will eventually be used to help our state as well as our local governments with determining what additional services are needed to help our immigrant community. And my concern is that if we include unlawful residents in this report, the data will lead to our state and local governments creating additional or new programs and services aimed at benefiting unlawful residents that will further lead to Maryland becoming a destination for unlawful citizens. Thank you.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I'd like to thank the maker of the amendment, the good delegate from Frederick and Carroll counties, for his thoughtfulness and trying to improve this bill. But I would ask the body to resist the amendment. I don't believe that, given the intent of the bill, that this amendment would improve it. First of all, this amendment proposes to exclude a significant population of Marylanders. We are here representing all Marylanders, all residents of our state. They are human beings. I think it's important to remember that. We are here to work for all of the people, all of the human beings who reside in Maryland, regardless of eye color, geography, national origin, Myers-Briggs personality type. We are here to represent everyone, regardless of immigration status. So this amendment would exclude an important population of residents of our state. Excluding Marylanders who are not lawfully present or who are undocumented, that denies the state useful information that we need to deliver effective policies and programs. There are about 221,000 Marylanders, human beings residing in our state, who are undocumented. They work and pay taxes. They contribute. They are students, scholars. They are healthcare workers. They are construction and laborers. They pay taxes. In fact, Marylanders who are undocumented pay about $607 million in taxes. That was the most recently available data from 2021. Of that $607.2 million that Marylanders who are undocumented contribute, $257 million of that is state and local taxes. So they're contributing to the programs and services that the state delivers. They should be represented on this commission. They should have a say. I think it's also important to underscore that new Americans, whether they are naturalized, in the process of being naturalized, or undocumented, they make up about 20% of Maryland's labor force. That's significant. There are 6 million Marylanders, 20% of them, about 970,000, work in our state. About 23% of Maryland's STEM workers, that's science, math, engineering, and technology, they are new Americans. 28% of new businesses are started by new Americans. They are entrepreneurs contributing to our economy. And for those of you who are like me, passionate about healthcare and public health in our state, 38% of Maryland's health aides, those are the frontline workers, the personal care assistants, the personal aides, the folks, mostly women, who help your granny stay living independently and healthily and safely in her home, or maybe helping your cousin who has a disability continue to live independently. 38% of those workers are new Americans. So I ask the body to resist this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think we can all agree that there's a major crisis at the border, no matter what side we fall on, and we all wish at the federal level they would address this and fix this problem. But until they do, our states and our local jurisdictions are being forced to deal with this. And we've got to figure out how to resolve these issues that are happening with this influx of folks who are coming in to our country in waves. And for years, it was mostly just our border states who were dealing with this. But as of late, we've seen cities and states very far away from the border, such as New York City or D.C., taking a real hit and being overwhelmed with this burden. And whether we're talking about the state of California, who allows undocumented workers to get disability insurance, paid family leave, or New York City providing cash assistance, SNAP benefits. And then we've got Massachusetts, where folks are being put in hotels. These types of programs and benefits continue who directly assist unlawful residents that is funded by taxpayers. It continues to attract these folks to these specific cities or states. And I certainly do not want to see anybody, whether we're talking about adults, children, families, on the street without food or shelter. And I understand that overwhelmingly most of these individuals that are coming to our country are escaping poor and crime-ridden countries, and they're coming here mostly for good reason. But as states and local jurisdictions continue to offer and create programs such as these, my concern is that we are specifically attracting them to come to our state or to our local jurisdictions. So with that, I move the amendment, Madam Speaker.
Floor leader.
Madam Speaker, thanks again to the good delegate. I realize he's put a lot of thought into this. He's thinking broadly about our country's immigration policies, and that is important. I would remind the body that we're here to represent the people of Maryland and that we don't actually set federal immigration policy in this body. Our job is to serve the people of Maryland, the residents of Maryland, the human beings who share our communities, our day-to-day lives, who contribute to our state. Again, I ask the body to resist the amendment. This bill is essentially a commission that will collect data and information and help the state deliver more effective services and programs. Resist the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Young lady from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just had to stand up. I have my own amendment, and I'll offer it in a moment, but I wanted to just comment on the tax policy piece that was mentioned. First, I'd love to know, if possible, where the data came from on the $600 million. But I do want to make sure the body understands that that number, no matter where it comes from, is not income tax. That's mostly sales tax that all people pay when they drive through, come through our state. That's likely what that data is talking about. I may be the only person here who owned a business that actually filed taxes for people living in the state illegally. I know people, I love people, but let me tell you how it actually works. There's a lot of great business owners. They're not paying their personal income taxes, y'all. Let me just tell you. They're not. They don't have to because they don't exist. Okay? We had to help somebody once they finally did get a green card 15 years after she had been here. Go back and file all those taxes because she never did. God bless her. I love her. But that's what's actually happening. So when you hear people say they're paying their taxes, please, they are not paying their income taxes. I'm telling you that right this minute. Can they? Is it possible to pay income taxes on, for example, a legally obtained income? You can do it. There is a way to do it. You can get an EIN. They are not doing it. So while they do contribute via sales tax, just like every other person who buys stuff in the state of Maryland, it does get a little tired to hear over and over again how much they contribute when they are not contributing to the level that many of us are forced to with the insane taxes on our income that we have in this state of Maryland.
Floor leader.
Madam Speaker, again, I urge the body to resist this amendment. Thank you.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? People in the lounge. If not, the clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing gentlelady from Hartford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. Amendment number 773121/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Body, for those who are Luddites on the floor, I'm going to read this real quick. It says, what it would add essentially is that the state's crime rate for new Americans both lawfully and unlawfully present in the United States, and the number of new Americans that are incarcerated in the United States. In the state of Maryland. This data is super important. I don't really think I need to tell everybody why, but I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about a story that recently happened over in the beautiful Prince George's County, where a 2-year-old child named Jeremy Poo Caceres was killed by someone who had an ICE detainer in Montgomery County, and they were not turned in. The saddest part, not just that a 2-year-old lost his life and that his 17-year-old mother had to bury a baby, is that these folks are predating their own communities. So if you love immigrant communities, whether they're here lawfully or not, protecting them from this crime is also our job. All of this amendment is asking to tabulate the data. How many folks do we have here who are committing crime in our state? How much crime are we importing into these immigrant communities when we know they are significantly less likely to report crimes? It is so much easier to predate people who are here unlawfully. They are not going to report crime. They are absolutely terrified. So it's our responsibility, if we say that they are part of our communities, they're residents, and we represent them, to make sure that we consider all the factors that lead into the crime in their communities. And a huge factor is whether or not they're here lawfully. This doesn't exclude them, this includes them in the data collection so that we can get a beautiful picture of what's actually happening. So our law enforcement and this body, and the one across the hall that sometimes does work, not on Saturdays, so that we can all make good policy to make sure they're protected. Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you to the good delegate from Hartford County for proposing her amendment. I know her goal is to improve the bill, but I would urge the body to reject this amendment. First, because it's not necessary. There are other entities at the state level and at the federal level that already collect crime-related data, and whether that pertains to American-born or foreign-born individuals who are committing crimes in our communities. That data is being collected. I would suggest taking a look at the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, which houses the Maryland Statistical Analysis Center. It looks at crime data up, down, sideways, backwards, in every direction we might want them to do. They support the development of public safety policies. That's their job. I'd also mention there's a crime dashboard now, if you guys may have discovered on the interwebs, that the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention maintains that may provide some of that data. I haven't had a chance to look because I've been, like you, on this floor. I'd also direct your attention to the Maryland National Incident-Based Reporting System dashboard, which analyzes and presents crime-related public safety data. That information that the good delegate is interested in may be available there already. And ultimately, the federal government, direct your attention to the Federal Bureau of Justice Statistics, whose job it is, who's resourced and staffed by experts who pay attention to crime statistics. I urge you to reject the amendment on those grounds. And secondly, if I may, this Commission on New Americans is focused on our communities. And in the bill, there is a list of individuals who will be included on this commission, and they include folks from the healthcare sector, education sector, immigration law, as well as those who have expertise in criminology. So the subject of public safety is certainly in the wheelhouse of this commission, and I'm sure they'll pay attention to it because there will be a member on the commission with expertise in criminology. Next, remember, this commission will be housed not in the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, but rather in the Governor's Office of Community Initiatives, and I underscore that to remind the body that this commission's purpose is to improve the way our government, our state, delivers for the people of Maryland, the human beings of Maryland. With that, I urge you to resist this amendment.
Madam Speaker.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the good delegate from Baltimore City's words. I have actually spent a little bit of time on the new dashboard because another good delegate from Baltimore City brought it to our committee and talked about it on a bill hearing. So I was able to look through that data. They do not break it down, however, by new Americans lawfully and unlawfully present in the state. Additionally, as the good delegate mentioned, there will be law enforcement. There is a nexus. This is already going to be included in some form. And my main question is, if our goal is to make people feel welcome and to figure out how we can help them, we cannot ignore the fact that they cannot push their baby down the street in a stroller without being in fear of a drive-by. This is very reasonable. This is very reasonable. This is data that should be considered. It is quality of life data. If this bill is about quality of life for immigration to this state, for new Americans living in Maryland, then looking at the picture of crime that is plaguing their communities is really the least we can do. Because if you don't feel safe when you go to sleep at night, you're not going to love being a Marylander. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I press my amendment.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 38. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1051, Maternal Health Assessments, Referrals, and Reporting. Maryland Maternal Health Act of 2024. Favor report is amended. Adopted.
Maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have an amendment at the desk. It is number 333921/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you. So House Bill 1051 requires various reporting and forms to be completed and provided to each local health department and the Maryland State Department of Health for newborns and maternal health in the state. This amendment adds the same requirement for abortion reporting. I move the amendment.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I would encourage all of us to resist this amendment. The amendment that the good delegate proposes, and again, I would express my appreciation for him providing it to me well in advance, but this, in fact, is a separate bill. And this amendment, if anything, was heard as a bill in our committee just the other day. And so, body, I again urge us to resist this amendment. And again, we should not consider it as a floor amendment. Please resist this amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you. I do want to thank you for recognizing the need for reporting requirements for maternal health. As we've discussed previously in this body, Maryland is one of only 4 states that does not voluntarily report abortion statistics to the Centers for Disease Control. Abortion reporting is equally important and vital to understanding women's health. The reporting requirement under this amendment is in a format where the patient is not personally identifiable and asks for reasons as to why the mother might choose an abortion. This is necessary so the state can direct its resources to those most in need. The governor, in his February 12th press release, announced an additional $15.6 million to improve abortion care access statewide. In that press release, Planned Parenthood President Karen Nelson is quoted as saying, "I can't say enough how proud we are here at Planned Parenthood of Maryland for the first of its kind Abortion Care Access Act." And National Abortion Federation Chief Program Officer Melissa Fowler remarked, "We're thrilled about the launch of Maryland's Abortion Care Clinical Training Program and extremely proud to represent our members in the project's implementation." If Maryland taxpayers are spending in excess of $15 to $20 million to support the abortion industry with virtually no reporting requirements in this state, they deserve some accountability in that program, just as they do with the $750,000 program being established in this bill. For these reasons, I press the amendment.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I would urge this body to resist this amendment, not only because, again, as I articulated, that this indeed is a separate bill, but according to the Guttmacher Institute, abortions are almost always underreported to the state surveillance systems, which tells us that this data would be inaccurate, which would, if anything, undermine the existing reporting efforts that are outlined in this bill. So again, colleagues, I urge us to resist this amendment.
On the amendment. The maker of the motion, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. 46 other states find it necessary to report to the CDC, and I would press the amendment.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? No. Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Special order calendar number 45. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 1117, Landlord and Tenant Failure to Repair Serious and Dangerous Defects, Tenant Remedies, Tenant Safety Act of 2024. Favor report is amended and adopted.
Recognizing the floor leader. You're the only one? Okay. You're the floor leader.
I'm sorry, you said floor leader.
Yeah, I'll yield to the yield to the gentleman who offered the special order.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. An amendment at the desk, 783921/1.
Amendment number 1.
Said be considered reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yesterday, we had some debate on House Bill 693 that did a whole bunch of bad things, but one of the things it did was not allow for the landlords to recoup some of their filing fees. Well, this bill allows a tenant to sue their landlord, and guess what? They can recoup all their filing fees and court costs. So I believe they're in parity under the law. So this amendment strikes that portion and puts tenants and landlord on equal footing to try to provide some equity for the landlords. Move the amendment. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Floor
Madam
leader.
Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I'd just like to thank the good gentleman from St. Mary's County for sharing the amendment with the committee. However, I do have to urge the body to resist the amendment for two reasons. First of all, what's in the bill now actually is what achieves parity between landlords and tenants, because what this amendment does is strike the ability for tenants to recoup attorney's fees if they prevail. That is an ability that landlords already have. In fact, if you Google the National Apartment Association's model lease, you will find 8 different references to how landlords can recoup their attorney's fees if they win. The second reason that you should resist this is because this provision in the bill, which this amendment would strike, is meant to tear down a barrier that allows tenants to be represented when they sue their landlords. They would only be able to get attorney's fees if they prove that the landlord caused dangerous conditions in their unit and that the landlord failed to fix those dangerous conditions after a reasonable period of time. So we're not talking about frivolous lawsuits. If a plaintiff files a frivolous lawsuit, they're not going to get any attorney's fees or cost. So please vote red. A green amendment on this, or green vote on this amendment sadly preserves the status quo in Maryland, where we have children waking up surrounded by rats, cockroaches, and sewage. Vote red.
Maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I agree with what the floor leader just said, but that's just the opposite in a bill that we voted last night. The policy out of the E&T committee is heads, they win, tails, you lose. It can be summed up that briefly. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move the amendment.
Madam Speaker, just very briefly, again, this bill currently has parity. Landlords can already collect attorney's fees. This bill in its original form allows tenants to do the same. This amendment would put the parties on unequal footing. Please vote red on the amendment.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Oppose? Roll call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their votes? Does anyone care to change your vote? If not, clerk will take the call. The amendment fails.
Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could the floor leader rise for a question?
Good
Floor
morning.
leader.
In years past, we've talked about mold. Is mold in this bill as well?
Mold was struck in the bill. It was struck. It's not in the bill.
Okay, let me ask. All right, thank you for that. Let me ask a second question. If the tenant is the party that did substantial damage to the unit, or if there was a problem with water damage, we'll say, that went on for a period of time, how do you reconcile like tenant responsibility for some of these damages that might lead to a determination that the home is no longer habitable?
Under the bill, and indeed under current law, the landlord can raise a defense to this lawsuit, which is that the tenant actually caused the damage. And if that's the case, if the tenant caused the damages, they cannot collect. They cannot collect damages, they cannot get an injunction, they cannot get attorney's fees, they can't get anything, and the lawsuit will be dismissed.
All right, so let me tie into the other bill we had yesterday. So if a landlord concludes that for whatever reason under this bill, maybe there was an action by the tenant, and we get there and we realize it's the tenant's responsibility, now I need to get the tenant out of the house so I can get the work done. Try to help me mesh what that looks like in practice. That's my last question.
So you're asking if the landlord is trying to evict the tenant because they need to have work done on the house, or they need to remove them temporarily so they can have work done?
Maybe breach of lease. would be more.
And it is breach their lease?
Breach a lease as in you've done damage to my property, you've got to get out so I can fix it, sort of
The
thing.
remedies under this bill would be the exact same under current law, which is that the landlord breaches the lease because they've caused damage to the unit. They're going to be liable, and yes, they will occasionally have to vacate the unit for those damages to be remedied by the landlord.
All right, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any further debate on the amendment? No further debate. HB 1117 will be printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation, report number 17. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 440, motor vehicle registration, exceptions for golf carts, Cobb Island, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 653, St. Mary's County, motor vehicle registration, exception for golf carts, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1512, Bay Restoration Fund, use of funds, municipal wastewater facilities, sunset repeal, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Environment and Transportation, report number 18. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 24, environment, impact of environmental permits and state agency actions, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsor and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 clarifies the types of permits covered under the bill, alters the evaluation process under the bill, and specifies the actions that may be taken by MDE on a permit application subject to certain conditions, requires MDE to publicly post certain permit applications in a certain manner, strikes language that would have altered current law regarding certain reporting requirements for state agencies, and requires MDE to consult with stakeholders in developing, implementing regulations, and make certain considerations for improving public outreach and notice regarding certain permit determinations. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 343, Environment, Cox Creek Citizens Oversight Committee, membership, favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, this bill modifies the membership and duties of the Cox Creek Citizens Oversight Committee. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 makes changes to the membership and duties of the committee. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable reports as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 689, electric vehicles, repeal of excise tax credit and establishment of rebate program, favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Thank you. As amended, this bill establishes the electric vehicle rebate program in place of the electric vehicle excise tax. Committee amendments. Number 1, strike the income caps for eligibility. Number 2, the requirement that the manufacturer comply with state and federal rules on clean fuel vehicles. And number 3, strikes the public outreach. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Recognizing the minority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the floor leader entertain some questions regarding this bill?
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would be so entertained.
Thank you. Good morning. So, what is the significance of changing the electric vehicle incentivization program, from want of another word, from a tax credit to a rebate program?
So what we have seen in other states that have done this is that it is more of an incentive to get the point of sale rebate. So when you are there, you actually see it, you feel it, you know that you're getting the discount, the rebate, as opposed to many months later getting a tax credit.
So how, and I appreciate that from a sort of psychological perspective, but from a fiscal perspective, the tax credit program works where I buy it, and then I get the verification that I get the credit, correct? And then when I write it off essentially from a tax liability that I may have, or it's refunded to me as a refundable tax credit where the state's actually paying me to offset my cost. How are we funding the point of sale rebate? I come in, I buy the Tesla, I'm ready to drive off the lot. Somebody's cutting me a check. Where's the check money coming from?
It's coming from the same fund that we have right now.
So are we
have
going to
the
then?
fund that's set up for the excise tax.
Okay.
And it's the same money. It's just coming at the point of sale.
So are we
Cap.
then giving that money to the dealers? So we don't have a state worker at all of these dealers who's sitting there and saying, when you drive off the lot, here's your free money. We're giving the money to the dealers, to the e-vehicle dealers to dispense the rebate?
So what will happen is when the purchaser purchases the vehicle and the dealer gives them this rebate, the dealer will then turn around and apply for that funding.
So the dealer is front loading the rebate program, and then they're getting it on the back end from a state program.
It's the same as the federal program.
Okay. And the dealers, do they understand and have the capacity, financial capacity, to front load all of these monies? So if someone comes in and buys 500 electric vehicles from me over the course of a month, I think that's probably a very high number given how many really are sold, and the rebate is X, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. That's a lot of money for someone to front. Are they aware of that and participatory in that?
Yes, the dealers support this.
Okay. So you said one thing with respect to the amendments, that we're eliminating the income cap on who qualifies. So my understanding of the credit, there was an income cap that said if you're kind of rich and you're buying that $100,000 Tesla, you may not get the same credit amount. But you said something in the amendments. I saw someone's head poke their head up back there. If you're eliminating the income amounts, does this mean that the richest person in the state of Maryland could go in and buy the highest priced electric vehicle car and still get a rebate?
That's currently true. So that's the status quo. What we're doing right now is the status quo. There had been some thought to put in that income cap, but it's just not feasible given our current
So you're saying that in the sponsor's original bill, there was an income cap and the committee said, take that out and keep it the way it is?
Correct.
Okay, so essentially the bill is construed, the program is construed, allows the richest person in the state to buy the most expensive electric car, and we incentivize them to do that by providing them taxpayer funds
So it's not for the most expensive car. There is a cap
on the car.
on the car. On
What's the cap?
price. Is it 50? 50.
$50,000.
Correct.
Do you know how many electric vehicles currently exist in the market that are below $50,000?
Quite a few.
Quite a few. What would the names of some of them be? I'm not trying to trick you.
Chevy Volt.
The Chevy Volt. Is that the one where Chevrolet just shut down the manufacturing facility to continue making?
Apparently, the crowd here knows far better than I do all the names.
Everybody
I'm
but
hearing.
you and I here owns an electric vehicle. I'm like,
I'm
all
hearing
right.
Tesla. I'm hearing Chevy Bolt. There are 8 or 9 that I understand. There are quite a few.
Okay. Are you this isn't particularly on the bill, and I don't mean to be unfair about it, but we all are aware that a significant number of manufacturers are ramping back, in America, at least in North America, are ramping back their production of electric vehicles from what their intentions were, assuming the marketplace growth. Do you think that we'll still have the same marketplace growth in Maryland I guess the better way to ask, is the program capped? Is it like, hey, we only have so much money and you only get so much out of it?
Correct.
What's it
is.
capped at?
$8.25 million.
8.25 million, and what's the max rebate that you could get per transaction?
3,000.
3,000. I can't do that math off the top of my head, but once I know my friends are looking at it, I got to use the Google machine to do that. But so a $3,000 rebate for an $8.25 million program. Do you have a translation from the committee as to how many vehicles maximum that would potentially, how many transactions that would potentially incentivize?
About 2,700. And I will tell you, we're already out of money.
That's
we
right.
already ran out of money.
That's right. So
It's well subscribed.
So 2,700 transactions a year is the maximum amount that the program would allow.
Correct.
And if we did 2,700 transactions a year in electric vehicles, how long would it take us to reach our goals under the legislation passed to meet the California standard for electric vehicle sales?
This is just one part of the toolbox, and I will
Right.
tell you, I became a
Take a
lawyer, so
long
I
time.
didn't have to do math.
Me too.
So
I'm enjoying this. So thank you. I appreciate that. And just, without amendment, I just think that this program is not going to get you anywhere near your numbers. It's basically just, it's a giveaway. And we'll rest with that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 750, Vehicle Laws, Damage, Obscured, or Modified Registration Plates. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Floor leader.
my apologies, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendment prohibits a person from obscuring or modifying a registration plate in a manner to prevent identification. The prohibition is a secondary offense, may only be enforced with a warning for a first offense. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 823, Fire Protection and Prevention, Residential Rental Property Requirements, Melanie Nicole Diaz, Fire Safety Act. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As amended, the bill establishes requirements related to the installation of smoke detectors and notices regarding the lack of automatic sprinkler systems in residential high-rise buildings. Further, the bill establishes a work group to develop fire safety practices pre-1974 high-rise apartment buildings and study to make recommendations regarding the improvements of fire safety in high-rise apartment buildings that do not have fire sprinkler systems. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2, in addition to, in residential high-rises, rental units alters the mandatory fire safety and evacuation training requirements for existing tenants by requiring them every 2 years instead of every 6 months. It also alters the work group to study fire safety risk in high-rise apartment buildings that do not have automatic sprinkler systems and develop recommendations and the best practices for the improvement of fire safety high-rise apartment buildings that do not have fire sprinkler systems. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill as to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1032, Highways, Tourist Area, and Corridor Signage Program. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Thank you. The committee amendments: first, strike the eligibility committee. Second, alter the process for developing and implementing signage plans. And third, limit the information and symbols that may appear on a sign. Move the amendments.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1199, Transportation Mobility League Paratransit Service Improvement Study. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
As amended, House Bill 1199 requires the Maryland Transportation Institute at the University of Maryland to conduct a study to identify methods to improve the MTA's American with Disabilities Act Mobility Link paratransit service. The committee amendments require consultation with the Maryland Commission on Disabilities and the State Coordinating Committee for Human Services Transportation, and require the study to develop recommendations on services to persons outside of 3/4 of a mile of a fixed route and interjurisdictional restrictions to paratransit services. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1318, Solid Waste Disposal Surcharge and Wasted Food Reduction and Diversion Fund and Grant Programs established. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 alters project eligibility and priority and strikes language that would have established a statewide solid waste disposal surcharge and makes conforming changes. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1511, Forest Conservation Act Modifications. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Be so much considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As amended, HB 1511 delays the effective dates of specified provisions. The significant majority of chapters 541 and 542 of the 2003 Forest Conservation and Retention Act from July 1st, 2024 until July 1st, 2026, mainly due to unattainable deadlines for the Department of Natural Resources and Local Governments. Committee amendment establishes that the delay does not apply to provisions governing qualified conservations in forest mitigation banks. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title?
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to special order HB 1511 until Monday at the appropriate time.
Okay. She told me that earlier. Question for the House is to special order HB 1511 to the appropriate time Monday. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The bill has been special ordered until Monday. Report of the Committee on Ways and Means, report number 18. Clerk, read the bill.
House Bill 787, Allegheny County, Allegheny Regional Recreational Economic Development Authority, established. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1281, Economic Development, Tourism Zones, Designation and Benefits. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
The amendment clarifies the application of the admissions and amusement tax exemption under the bill. Madam Speaker, move the amendment, please.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now to adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Health and Government Operations. Report number 16. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 393, Higher Education, Maryland Dent Care Program eligibility. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1476, State Board of Examiners for Audiologists, Hearing Aid Dispensers, Speech Language Pathologist, and Music Therapist. Appointment of members. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1498, State Board of Massage Therapy Examiners, Aiding or Abetting Unauthorized Practice, Prohibition. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1521, Maryland Children's Health Program Eligibility and Administration. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Health and Government Operations, report number 17. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 68, Continuing Care, Retirement Communities, Governing Bodies, Grievances, and Entrance Fees. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Oh, there you go, over there. You just got to recognize the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 requires providers to post the most recent disclosure statement on the provider's website, requires providers to hold quarterly meetings open to all subscribers, and requires the last quarterly meeting of the year to include a summary of internal grievances. Amendment number 3 retains current law for membership of provider governing bodies, requires the governing body to make determinations of whether a matter is confidential, and specifies that the department will annually collect information from providers on grievances and submit a report to the Information on the Senate Finance and House Health and Government Operations Committee. Finally, Amendment 4 retains current law on terminated continuing care agreements and entrance fee refunds, but requires a provider to submit a specified written report to a subscriber whose unit has not been reoccupied within 9 months, and follow-up reports every 6 months until the unit is reoccupied. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 119, Public Health, Giving Infants a Future Without Transmission, Gift Act. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 provides that the reports required under the current law related to HIV reporting and any proceedings, records, or files relating to the reports are not discoverable and are not admissible in evidence in any criminal, civil, or administrative matter. Please move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 353, Maryland Department of Health, 211, Maryland Oversight. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment, thank you. The amendment number 1 requires the 211 Maryland Board of Directors to be expanded to include 2 representatives of 211 Maryland call centers nominated by the 211 call centers. Madam Speaker, please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 411, Public Health, Opioid Overdose Reversal Drug Standing Orders. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill and requires the study by MDH on opioid overdose reversal drugs. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 464, Health Occupations Practice Audiology Definition. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 clarifies that the definition is limited to 1, removal of foreign bodies and cerumen that does not require anesthesia, and 2, ordering cultures, blood work, and imaging related to the conditions to the ear. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 598, Discrimination, Military Status, Prohibition. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 prohibits discrimination for the purposes of housing and employment only and not in other areas of the law, and strikes veterans from the definition of military status for the purpose of determining discrimination. I move the amendments.
The question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 723, Office of the Attorney General, Rights of Residents of Healthcare Facilities, Injunctive Relief and Penalties. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 strikes provisions in the bill authorizing the Attorney General to request a court to impose civil penalties for violation of residents' rights. Provides that the Attorney General may not duplicate any corrective action imposed by the department for the same violation. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 806, Physician Assistants Revisions, Physician Assistant Modernization Act of 2024. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 adds physician assistants to the definition of healthcare provider for the purpose of certain provisions of law governing healthcare malpractice claims. Authorizes a physician assistant to delegate medical duties under certain circumstances. Requires a physician's assistant to provide notice to the Board of Physicians of a collaboration agreement rather than submitting the agreement to the board, and clarifies what medical acts a physician assistant may perform. Amendment number 3 specifies the circumstances under which a physician assistant is required to obtain board approval to perform advanced duties. Establishes the board authority to modify a collaboration agreement or the delegation of advanced duty under the agreement, and establishes requirements for a patient care team physician to delegate certain prescribing and dispensing. And finally, amendment number 4 requires the board to review and update the list of advanced duties for physician assistants with certain stakeholders by January 1, 2025. Move the amendments.
The question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 822, Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Employed Individuals with Disabilities. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 strikes specified requirements for the EID program and instead requires MDH to study the physical and operational impact of implementing an employed persons with disabilities program that serves individuals aged 65 and older and establishes a premium contribution for EID program services that is based on an applicant's earned and unearned income. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Health and Government Operations, report number 18. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 876, Health Insurance, Pharmacy Benefits Managers, Specialty Drugs Dispensed by a Physician. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 prohibits carriers from excluding covered specialty drugs administered by or dispensed by a provider if the provider is an in-network provider of covered medical oncology services that complies with the state regulations and the covered specialty drug meets specified criteria. The amendment also establishes required reimbursement rate for providers and provides an exception for failure to satisfy medical necessity criteria. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Questions now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 932, Health Insurance Utilization Review Revisions. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the committee and sponsor
Getting
of
a
the
few
bill.
steps in. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 makes clarifying changes. Amendment number 3 alters a provision relating to prescription drugs and reauthorization requirements by requiring a carrier to allow a patient to remain on a prescription drug if it is for the treatment of mental health disorder. Was previously approved by the carrier, and the prescriber attests that the drug continues to be necessary to effectively treat the patient. Amendment number 4 requires that the Maryland Healthcare Commission to monitor and report on progress toward implementation of electronic prior authorization and real-time benefit check technology instead of establishing a work group. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 933, Behavioral Health Crisis Response Services 988 Trust Fund Fees. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors and make technical changes. Amendment number 2 establishes a cap on administrative expenses for the Comptroller's Office of 6% for 3 years, then 3% beginning in fiscal year 2028, exempts the Federal Lifeline program from the fees, and delays the implementation of fees on prepaid wireless until 2027. Please move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1056, State Board of Pharmacy Prohibition on Discrimination Against 340B Drug Distribution. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much to be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 clarifies that the provisions of the bill apply only to 340B manufacturers, but that an investigation of a violation may include a wholesale or third-party logistics provider. Page clarifies that alleged violations committed by the person that is not licensed or permitted by the Board of Pharmacy will be investigated by the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General's Office, reduces the penalty from $50,000 per violation to $5,000 per violation, and requires the Prescription Drug Affordability Board to conduct a study on the 340B program, including the implementation and impact of the bill. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1122, Maryland Healthcare Commission Nursing Homes Acquisitions. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Found it.
That's
Move so
good.
much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 clarifies when a provider is required to provide notice of a change of ownership or submit a request for approval of an acquisition, and requires the executive director to complete a review of an acquisition request with 45 days of receiving a completed application, or refer the request to the commission, which must make a final decision within 60 days. Amendment number 3 requires notice of the final decision and reports to be provided to the long-term care ombudsman, allows a person acquiring ownership to temporarily delicense beds for 3 years to reduce the number of rooms with more than 2 beds, and authorizes the commission to extend the 3 years for good cause shown, clarifies the criteria the commission will consider when making a decision on approval and acquisition, and provides that the regulations adopted by the commission will apply prospectively. I move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1194, Hospitals, Clinical Staffing, Committees, and Plans Establishment, Safe Staffing Act of 2024. Favorable amendments. Amendment 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill and requires hospitals to establish and maintain a clinical staffing committee and develop a clinical staffing plan, and requires training about the patient's bill of rights to be provided by a hospital staff or a third party contracted by the hospital. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1327, Maryland Department of Health Body Altering Aesthetics Advisory Committee. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 as the chair of the State Board of Physical Therapy Examiners to the advisory committee. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1337, Health Insurance, Appeals and Grievances Process, Reporting Requirements, and Establishment of Work Group. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Madam Speaker, move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 specifies the carriers will submit information on clean claims and strikes the language requiring a work group. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1388, Labor and Employment, Non-Compete and Conflict of Interest Clauses, Veterinary and Healthcare Professionals. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Be the reading of the amendments. Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 strikes a provision from the bill that would have applied the bill retroactively and alters the effective date of the bill. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Recognize the gentleman from the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk, 423-725/1.
Amendment number 1.
So, Madam Speaker, the floor leader and the sponsor of the bill moves so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the floor leader had discussed the amendments to the bill, and I serve on Economic Matters Committee, so we have labor and employment. We do talk about non-compete agreements. So one of her amendments struck the part of the bill that said applying this act retroactively. And so instead of being silent on the bill, my amendment says that this act shall be construed to apply only prospectively and may not be applied or interpreted to have any effect on or application to any employment contract or similar contract or agreement entered into before the effective date of this act. And Madam Speaker, I would move the amendment.
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd ask the body to resist, and I want to thank the gentleman for presenting me with the bill in advance. It's not necessary. We've already taken care of it. Thank you.
Maker of the amendment.
Madam Speaker, may I ask the floor leader a question?
Floor leader.
Okay.
Okay. So the legislative intent with striking that is that you do not want to see this law apply retroactively, but would you agree that you should only apply prospectively?
That is the legislative intent.
Okay, all right. So, Madam Speaker, I accept that, and if we call a vote on it, I think it works against what the floor debate was, and I withdraw the amendment.
Okay. Any additional amendments to the bill to its title?
A question, Madam Speaker.
Minority.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, and I appreciate that point. You can't impair, I mean, I can guarantee you that. You can't impair a contract that someone signed with a healthcare professional 2 or 3 years ago as I have a non-compete. You can't impair that through an act. That would be thrown out in, I think, probably every court in the state. So I appreciate what you're saying. Are we saying now going forward that you can't do that either? So someone comes in, a hospital network, and I can tell you, we have a fairly decent-sized large hospital. It's actually owned by the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center as part of, they're the second largest hospital network in America, well larger actually than the University of Maryland network. They have a very hard time getting people sometimes to come. And so what they do sometimes is say, hey, we will pay for a large portion of your education. We will sign you up, we will pay for certain things for you, but in return, at the conclusion, we have a hospital that sits directly across the Potomac River from us that is maintained by the West Virginia University Hospital System. We have no University of Maryland system hospitals in our region. And so they have a problem sometimes of the WVU system. They have different formulas, and they will say, hey, thanks for doing your 3 years and getting your education paid for at the Western Maryland Health System owned by UPMC. Now we'd like to give you $25,000 a year more to cross the river 15 minutes away and work at our hospital. And traditionally, there have been non-compete provisions of that. Under this law, will they be prevented from doing that?
Floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What a great question. Actually, this bill is actually pretty specific. It talks about non-compete agreements. And by that, we're talking about agreements that limit, usually geographically and for a period of time,
Time, scope, and place.
Where someone may find employment after they leave. So it does nothing to prevent agreements to pay back loans. It does nothing to prevent agreements that say, for instance, when you leave, and for medical cases, the patient charts stay with the practice. So there are still other kinds of things that employers can do in order to make sure that they recoup whatever investment they feel that they've made. Okay. It's a free market bill.
Would it alter existing Maryland law? Existing Maryland law generally tends to suggest that non-compete agreements are invalid if they are too restrictive as to time, scope, and place, so that it's for 10 years after you leave my job, or it's for the entire state of Maryland, or a 500-mile radius from where my company is, or it's with respect to scope. For my company, you did X. I want to restrict you if you leave from doing X, Y, and Z. You know, it's beyond the scope. Would this change this? So let's say someone who's a hospitalist could go 15 minutes away to another hospital and immediately begin working there in the exact same capacity the day after they left their existing hospital employer.
Right. So case law, and as you say, current law has found, as you described, that if the non-compete is judged to be too restrictive, that they're found to be unenforceable as it is. So that remains the same.
Okay. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you.
Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1396, Drug and Alcohol Treatment Programs, Discharge of Patients and Referral Services, Standards. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 strikes the requirement that MDH establish standards required by regulation and provides for the study. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1497, State Board of Massage Therapy Examiners, Scope of Practice, Reinstatements, and Examinations by Healthcare Providers. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Move so much be considered the reading amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 removes a certain practice from the definition of practice massage therapy. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 13. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 37, Reentry Services for Women, Commission and Pilot Program Establishment. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 changes the name of the commission, requires the governor to appoint the members of the commission rather than the Secretary of Public Safety and Correctional Services, requires GOCAP to staff the commission rather than DPSCS, alters the membership and charge of the commission, requires GOCAP to oversee the pilot program rather than DPSCS, alters the charge of the pilot program, requires the organizations involved in the pilot program to work in partnership, and strikes the bill's sunset provision. Move the amendment, please, Madam Speaker.
The question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 128, Crimes Interfering with a Legislative Proceeding. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendment limits the prohibited conduct to causing or threatening to cause physical harm to a person and reduces the maximum penalty of imprisonment to 3 years. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 145, Criminal Law, Revenge Porn, Visual Representation. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much we consider the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 establishes the statute of limitations for harassment by distribution of a deepfake image as created by the bill. It's 5 years after the victim knew or reasonably should have known of the violation. Amendment number 3 creates the crime of distribution of a deepfake image within the existing harassment statute. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 222, Correctional Services, Division of Pretrial Detention and Services, Facilities, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 288, Criminal Law, Visual Surveillance with Prurient Intent, Private Place and Minor Victim, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 496, Criminal Law, Sexual Crimes, Definition of Consent and Repeal of Force, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognize the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much we consider the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
The amendments make technical and clarifying changes and provide that submission as a result of fear, threat, or coercion does not constitute consent if the perpetrator knows or reasonably should have known that the victim would submit as a result of fear, threat, or coercion. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 589, Dorchester County, County Applicants Polygraph Examination, favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1037, Task Force on the Creation of a Division of Returning Citizens and Expanded Reentry Services Establishment, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 adds members to the task force. Amendment number 3 provides that a member of the task force serves at the pleasure of the person who appointed the member and requires the task force to vote to adopt a code of conduct. Please move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1093, Anne Arundel County Human Relations Commission Subpoena Enforcement, favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
So ordered.
Amendment, this is the committee amendments, alter procedures to be followed by the commission and the court when a person fails to obey a subpoena served by the commission. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary Report number 14. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 105, drunk driving offenses, ignition interlock system program. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing chairman of the committee.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the time at which a participant is considered to have begun participation in the program to be the day the ignition interlock system is installed in the participant's vehicle and requires the Motor Vehicle Administration to collect and report certain information. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 195, Public Safety, Missing Persons with Cognitive Impairment Purple Alert Program. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds a sponsor and make technical changes. Amendment number 2 expands the scope of the program to include individuals who have mental disorders and individuals who are deaf, and authorizes the Department of State Police to consult with relevant stakeholders in developing the details of the program. Please so much move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 404, Law Enforcement Wellness Checks Requirements, Gabriel's Law. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 adds a definition of interested party, alters the definition of qualified request, requires that a wellness check be conducted without unreasonable delay, and applies the wellness check requirement to fire, rescue, and emergency medical service entities as well as law enforcement agencies. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 458, Criminal Procedure, Protection of Identity of Minor Victim. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 is technical. Amendment number 3 adds a requirement of notice that the filing includes identifying information of a minor victim before the provisions of the bill applies, and makes the requirements of the bill applicable to the court and parties to the case. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 508, Children Labor Trafficking. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing, sure, 2 people are standing up. Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. May so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 is technical. Amendment number 3 adds labor trafficking of a child by any individual to 2 provisions of law, one affecting children in need of assistance and the other abuse and neglect. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 593, Criminal Law, Destroying Funerary Objects, Statute of Limitations. Favor the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and make technical changes. Amendment number 2 adds destruction of landscaping and grounds to the existing criminal prohibition and changes the statute of limitations to 3 years after local authorities knew or should have known of the violation. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 763, Commission on Hate Crime Response and Prevention Membership Alterations. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the chairman of the committee.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 strikes members representing specified organizations and substitutes 15 members who represent or advocate on behalf of individuals who are members of a protected class under the state's hate crime laws. It adds a member representing the Office of the Public Defender and sunsets the commission after June the 30th, 2027. Move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 892, Criminal Law Benefits Tracking. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker.
Good afternoon.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 alters the definition of coercion and government benefits. Move the amendments, Madam Speaker.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1086, Compensation for Individuals Erroneously Convicted. Alterations. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Madam Speaker.
Recognize the chairman of the committee.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds individuals who have been erroneously convicted of a conspiracy to commit a felony to qualify for compensation under the Act and requires a petition to be filed within 2 years from the bill's effective date. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 15. The clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 810, Criminal Law Weapon Crime Switch Auto Sear. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters the term rapid fire trigger activator to be rapid fire activator and adds switch auto sear to the definition of rapid fire activator. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment has been adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 16. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 544, criminal law, sexual extortion, stalking, and revenge porn, statute of limitations, and en banc review. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 changes the statute of limitation to 5 years for sexual extortion and 10 years for stalking. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 745, family law, protective orders, crimes of violence, and stalking.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 is technical. Amendment number 3 strikes the references to crimes of violence and stalking and provisions relating to the issuance of a permanent protective order. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 895, Maryland Tort Claims Act, sheriffs and deputy sheriffs, county responsibility. Favorable.
Question before the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read next bill.
House Bill 1047, consumer protection, self-administered sexual assault evidence collection kits. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the Vice Chair of the Committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and make technical changes. Amendment number 2 makes higher ed eligible for grant funding from the Forensic Nurse Examiner Training Grant Program, replaces the term sexual crime with the term sexually assaultive behavior in the admissibility provision of the bill, and prohibits the limitation or waiver of rights, remedies, and warranties on self-administered sexual assault evidence collection kits. Please move the amendment.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify. Somebody saying something?
Back here. Over here. Baltimore County. Okay, sorry.
Can you let me get
yes,
through what
sorry.
I got to get through?
You were on a roll, Madam
I
Speaker.
was.
You were. Roll on, roll on.
Yeah, tell you threw me off.
Sorry.
The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Recognizing the gentlelady for Baltimore County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would the floor leader rise for a question or two, please?
Sure. Vice Chair of the Committee.
I guess good afternoon at this point.
Good afternoon.
I was reading the bill and I had a couple of questions about the rape kits. Would you be okay with me special ordering this till the next session this afternoon so I can take a closer look at it?
I believe that would be fine.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for the consideration.
Thank
I appreciate it.
So if you could just get the amendments to me beforehand, that would be great.
I will, and if I have any specific questions, I'll come speak with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Question for the House is Special Order HB 1047 to the appropriate time later today. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The bill has been special ordered. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1081, public safety, automatic license plate readers, captured plate data. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the floor leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. May so much be considered the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 adds sponsors and makes technical changes. Amendment number 2 adds restrictions against the sale, access, and upload of automatic license plate data, authorizes the upload to the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center, applies the existing criminal prohibition to a vendor contracted by a law enforcement agency, and adds to the procedures that must be adopted by law enforcement agencies relating to the operation and use of automatic license plate reader systems. Please move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. Question now, the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. That Can the leaders come up front, please? Okay, can everyone take a seat and listen up? That ends the work at the desk for right now. There is pizza in the back. We're going to be breaking for about an hour, and then we're coming back, so don't go far. Okay? And I'm going to still go through the committee stuff, so, okay?
The Appropriations Committee will not meet, Madam Speaker.
Okay, I was about to call appropriations. Okay, Judiciary.
The Judiciary Committee will not be meeting. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Environment and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Environment and Transportation Committee will not be meeting.
Ways and Means.
The Ways and Means Committee will be meeting immediately following floor session in the Old House Chamber for a quick vote.
Economic Matters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House Economic Matters Committee will be meeting immediately after the floor in the Silver Room. Immediately after the floor in the Silver Room.
Health and Government Operations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Health and Government Operations Committee will not be meeting.
Any subcommittee announcements? Okay, probably not. Any delegation announcements? Prince George's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Prince George's County delegation will meet in the hallway outside of the Silver Room for a quick vote.
Okay. Any other caucus announcements? Republican or Democratic caucus? Okay. All right. Are there any personal or guest announcements? I see a lot of empty chairs. With that, oh, did you get up?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to announce that last night, the Clarksburg High School girls basketball team won the state's 4A championship by beating Bethesda Chevy Chase High School.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the spirit of girls' high school basketball, I would also like to announce that the Hammond High School Lady Bears won the 2A championship last night. Congratulations, Howard County and District 13.
Okay.
Madam Speaker.
Gentlelady from Baltimore, Ken.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I don't want to do this later because I know everybody's going to be going home, but I would like to refer all of you to an invitation that you received for Monday at 6 o'clock on Crossover Day. If you're able to come by Governor Calvert House, a group I work with called My Heart's Home, which is dedicated to building accessible housing for folks with disabilities, is hosting this so that you can get to know us. Thank you.
Any other personal or guest announcements? All right, then, quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their presence? Clerk will call the roll. There being 132 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stands adjourned until Saturday, March 16th at 1:15 p.m., legislative date March 8th.